what people often don't realize also is that in Ferguson, there were Palestinian Americans who were protesting. Many people think of the Black Lives Matter movement as a movement of only black people, and that only black people were out protesting the killing of Mike Brown in 2014. But there were Palestinians, there were Latinos, there were Asian Americans. It was a multi, what you might call multiracial, although when I use that term, it's kind of bothersome to me. But I want to use this opportunity to say something about the way in which anti-blackness has traveled. And I'm not sure whether here in Germany you use the term anti-blackness. And I know that there is work that it does, but I'm very careful about the implications in this category, anti-blackness, implications that somehow black people constitute the most important group subject to racism, and that now anti-blackness is used as a way to be deeply critical of people of color. So it's, you've heard the term people of color, anti-blackness in people of color communities. And of course, there's racism. There's racism everywhere.
It makes the world go round.
Black people are subject to racism and have not been immune to the ideological assaults on other people of color. So I am really careful about assumptions that somehow black people are the primary. They're the primary victims. There's a lot of discussion about pain and injury, which of course are very important, but I think that sometimes it serves as a barrier to developing solidarity, to developing the kind of hyper-empathy that we were talking about. And if from where I stand, the importance of black people in the Americas resides precisely in the fact that there has been an ongoing freedom struggle for centuries and centuries. And this is more about freedom than it is about blackness, because there are also black people who are participating in the oppressive apparatus. And I don't want to forget that.
I have just a question. What do you think about Afro-Pessimism? I really want you to say something.
This was my way of speaking about Afro-Pessimism.
That's what I thought. Good. Okay, I get a good mark. That's what I thought. Good. Good. Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, in many places in Europe, I've noticed that these ideas are traveling so rapidly.
Started in France.
And in France, in the Netherlands. And I think it's linked to a kind of black nationalism that that always appears to be that to which black movements defer. There's a kind of capitulation in front of black nationalism. It keeps coming back. I mean, we struggled against it in the 60s, but it just keeps coming back. Whenever we speak about black movements, somehow their nationalism is contours, and that's another problem I have with the nation state and nationalism, the way in which it does its ideological work through those of us who think that we are contesting the state.
Yes, it's an object of resistance, Angela. I mean, that's why I said medicine and poison. Unless you constantly train, you got to be a Gramscian permanent persuader in order to use that bloody structure. But no, it's capable of great harm. But I just don't think, to my Mexican sister, that the state has to be like that. Those of us who are working on the subaltern sections of the electorate, the state, I mean, you will say no, and you will say no. As I say, I'm not shutting anyone, and you folks are my allies. But nonetheless...
We're also friends, Gayatri.
No,
We're not just allies.
no, friends are different. Friends, we are friends on many issues, not just the bloody state.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the state.